lover like any other. What do I get? I only want a friend who will stay to the end. What do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get?
Yeah, I was introduced to Pete Shelley and Howard Devoto by Malcolm McLaren. I was sort of stood outside the Free Trade Hall, and he sort of roped me in off the streets and introduced me to the pair of them. You know, I was arranging to meet someone else, but I met them, and we had this rehearsal from there, you know, and you know, there was just this racket, this sort of runaway train, because we were all sort of playing through one amp. It's just a noise, but you know, it's a really exciting noise. It sort of excited my veins. You know, it was the best drug you could ever get. Really, it was something I'd been looking for all my life. You know, and from there, you know, it just develops really.
First gig was July 20th, 1976. We played at Leicester Free Trade Hall with the Sex Pistols, and we played around. We played on the White Riot tour with the Clash, and then we got signed to EMI on the day Elvis Presley died, August the 16th, 1977. Then from then it was into the studio. Our first single was Orgasm Addict, and but we didn't get much radio play, but then again we never expected it to do. And then we recorded What Do I Get?
Which was like more of a definitive Buzzcocks song, I think, in terms of like it became what Buzzcocks were known for, these sort of, you know, tuneful songs with, you know, that noisy sort of guitar background and stuff.
The record company thought it'd be a good idea if people could see these boys play rather than having to go to a punk gig and be spat upon. And so they shoved us into the ITN studios in Wells Street. And before the 1 o'clock news, we rattled off What Do I Get?
I'm in distress, I need a caress. What do I get? I'm on the make, I just need a break. What do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get? I only get sleepless nights alone here in my haunted bed. The interest in the time I tried, I wish that only happened to me instead. What do I get? Oh, what do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get? Like any other, what do I get? I only want a friend who loves to the end. What do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get? Well, let me tell you now. What do I get? What do I get? What do I get? No love. What do I get? No sleep at night. What do I get? Nothing that's nice. What do I get? Nothing at all, at all, at all, at all, at all, at all, at all. 'Cause I don't get you.
On Top of the Pops, for the first time, we did I Don't Mind, which was a big excitement for all of us, because Top of the Pops was what every person aspired to, and that was like the pinnacle of the career at the time. It was like, but that's when you were really, you know, a star, when you were on Top of the Pops. So we went there, and it was good going into the BBC bar and rubbing shoulders with all the newsreaders who were there having a tipple before they went on to do the 9 o'clock news. And there was, before we, Top of the Pops actually happens. You go through countless run-throughs, and then they wheel in the audience. And then they tell the audience when to clap and not to stare at the cameras and not to make fools of themselves, or they'll be chucked out.
But it really did seem phony, and it was a difficult thing to do at the time, considering like we were, a sort of punky band that were playing in clubs and halls and stuff. And I did question, is it a valid thing to do? But in another way, I thought, well, it adds to the program, and hopefully, would sort of change things in some way. It's better seeing a band like Buzzcocks, or other bands that were around at the time, like the Jam or something, rather than seeing all the dross that was on. So if we could hog the scene, that was fair enough, So, as long as you give Top of the Pops a kick in the face, then it's fine.
Buzzcocks, thank you.
Reality's a dream, a game in which I seem to never find out just what I am. I don't know if I'm an actor or a ham, a shaman or sham, but if you don't mind, I don't mind. I'm lost without a clue, so how can I undo the tangle of these words? I keep breathing, I don't know if I should be believing this empty perceiving, but if you don't mind, I don't mind. I used to bet that you didn't care, but gambling never got me anywhere. Besides, I used to be so sure, something about you made me doubt you more. Can you convince me when everything I see just makes me feel you're putting me down? And if it's true, this pathetic clown will keep hanging around. That's if you don't mind, I don't mind. I used to bet that you didn't care, but gambling never got me anywhere. Besides, I used to feel so sure, something about you made me love you more. I even think I hate me when you call me on the phone. And sometimes when we go out, then I wish I stayed at home. And when I'm dreaming, or just lying in my bed, I think you've got it in for me. Is it all in my head? Is it in my head? Will you convince me when everything I see just makes me feel you're pulling me down? And if it's true, this pathetic clown will keep hanging around. That's if you don't mind.
I always remember afterwards, after doing Top of the Pops, I felt very deflated but there it was, I went back to the hotel and I was in there in the hotel room and I had to wash my socks in the sink, and I thought, surely somebody must be washing my socks by now that I'm a star. Round about on the second anniversary of Buzzcocks' first gig on July the 20th, 1976, we did a TV special for Granada TV called Badum Badum. It was filmed at the Leicester Free Trade Hall where we played our first gig.
There was cause for celebration in some ways. Something magical did happen there 2 years previously, and so it was worthwhile. I think it made a big statement for Manchester music at that time, and the first time we played there, people millions of people claimed to be there at the gig. I think there was about 200, but it did make a big statement, and it's well remembered that. So it was worthwhile going back and doing that. And that video captures some of the sort of atmosphere that was around at that time. It was basic and sloppy, but out of that came a lot of things.
Don't gob at me. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm in love again. Been like this before. I'm in love again. This time's true, I'm sure. Don't end up down the line, they wonder. I've been hurt so many times before. So my darling, learned to always love you more, love you more. It's my heart again that drives me so wild. I just can't explain, although I know to try. So why would I cry if you ever left me? Maybe 'cause you're all I'm living for. If heartbeats I want you badly. It's in my blood to always love you more, love you more. Oh my love again, what I say is true, though it may sound plain. I love you, and it means more to me than life on offer. And if this isn't true love, then I am sure that after this love there'll be no other, until the razor cuts.
The harmonies is one of our, distinctive traits, I think. All those O's and R's, they crop up on a lot of those early hit singles. It's just, like a natural thing that develops. It just seemed to fill in space because the music's so minimal, it's... These O's started coming out, and then the R's, the pain and the angst of but it's like classic background harmonies. Looking back at the time, it just seemed like when these songs were coming up, they just seemed to sit right. We didn't really sit down and think, well, we'll have to find out, a harmony with that, and. Things are going to be difficult. They just sort of seem to flow in, and with all those kind of hits at the time, they're just seated right. It's classic pop, I think.
Ever Fallen in Love? Some people say it's got the longest title of a popular song. I don't think it has really, but its true title was Ever Fallen in Love with Someone You Shouldn't Have Fallen in Love With, and it had lots of brackets in to make it a bit more mathematical. It was our biggest hit. It got to number 12. But in people's hearts, I think it got to number 1, and will stay there for quite a long time.
1, 2, 3, 4. You understand my natural emotions. You make me feel I'm gonna hurt, and I'm hurt. Commotion, I run the risk of losing you, and that's worse. Ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone you should have fallen in love with. I can't see much in the future unless we find out who's to blame. What a shame. Unless we realize we are the same. Ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone you shouldn't fall in love with. You spur my natural emotions. You make me feel I'm done for hurt, and I'm hurt. Commotion, I'll only end up losing you, and that's worse. Ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone you shouldn't fall in love with. Ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone you shouldn't fall in love with. Ever fall in love with someone, ever fall in love with someone you should have fallen in love with. Fall in love with. Ever fall in love with someone you should have fallen in love with.
now another one.
Loving you is easy, you were on my side. We played the game strictly to our rules. We let the field a love affair, which made all other lovers fools. Oh, how can you ever let me down? How can you ever let me down? How can you ever let me down? These promises are made for us. We'd always have time for each other whenever I needed you tonight. We promised to be true, there'd be no other. We promised that forever we would care. Oh, how can you ever let me down? How can you ever let me down? How can you ever let me down? These promises are made for us.
I remember writing the skeleton for that in my dad's bedroom. There's an old acoustic guitar there, and I sat on the edge of my dad's bed, and this horrible old acoustic guitar, out of tune and everything, and I sort of come up with the music and had this chorus, Promises, and I was going to make it kind of like a political song, you know, like a real punky thing, and I had this chorus, Promises, but I didn't have the sort of verses, or I'd written a few ideas down. We were making demos at the time in the studio, and for the time being I was singing like the melody and stuff. I'll make a cup of tea of my own, you know, I hate everybody, or whatever it was going to be. It was just like this rough idea. And as I was doing that, you know, Pete was in the control room, and he started writing down some verses for it. And that's one of the sort of classic situations for our songs that we collaborated on, was that it would be like, you know, I would have the sort of music and a chorus, and he'd write the verses, you know. And, you know, it happened on Fast Cars as well. But Promises was going to be a political song, and he made it more of a personal, romantic song, you know. But that's the way the chemistry is, you know.
We had to change, but you say the same. You wouldn't change. Oh, what a shame. 'Cause it's not easy, you're on my side. We play a game with 2 sets of rules. We leave the field in a love affair. Oh, strictly mental fools. Oh, why did you ever let me down? Why did you ever let me down? Why did you ever let me down? Those promises were made for us. You never have any time for me. Whenever I need you, you're not there. You've never been true, and it's plain to see. The fact is you never really cared. Oh, why did you ever let me down? Why did you ever let me down? Why did you ever let me down? Those promises we made for us.
Lipstick was filmed in a recording studio because of the VU meters in that studio, where Buzzcocks used to do demos, were a different kind to most others, where they had coloured lights which flashed around, and so we thought that looked good on a video. So I recorded the track there. After we recorded Promises, it was the end of a long day, and the song's really about somebody who learns of the death of a loved one through a condolence card.
When you kiss me, does it lipstick on my face? Will you miss me? In your dreams, is it all behind my face? Oh, when you kiss me, does the lipstick on my face? Oh, when you kiss me.
everybody's happy nowadays. Yeah, I mean, you know, the performance could be taken two ways. We were talking about money backstage and about having a wheelbarrow full of money and setting it on fire in the street and saying that's all money's worth, really. You know, wondering how people would react if you had this wheelbarrow with it all burning away, and you know, is it a waste or is that what money is really? There was those kind of questions going around, and so Pete put about £8 in his pocket and went on and, you know, did the performance with this sticking out,
and that caused a bit of an outrage by certain members of the public who thought that I was flaunting the fact that I had lots and lots of money by displaying £8. In some ways, it was showing that money is just a fashion accessory, and instead of going out and buying a better jacket, I enhance the value of my own.
Right now at number 29 in the charts, the latest sound from Buzzcocks. Everybody's happy nowadays.
Always wanted something I never could get. Life's an illusion, love's a dream, but I don't know what it is. Everybody's happy nowadays. Everybody's happy nowadays. I was tired of being upset. Always wanted something I never could get. Life's an illusion, love is a dream, but I don't know what it is. 'Cause everybody's happy nowadays. Everybody's happy nowadays. Life's an illusion, love is the dream, but I don't know what it is. Everyone's saying things to me, but I know it's okay, okay. Everybody's happy nowadays. Everybody's happy Love is a dream. Life's the illusion. Love is the dream. Everybody's happy nowadays. Everybody's happy nowadays. Bet you're tired of being upset. Always wanted something you never could get. Life's no illusion. Love's not a dream. Now I know just what it is.
Harmony in My Head, yes. I think it's one of the most aggressive Buzzcocks songs in its delivery. I sort of did it in a kind of James Joyce Ulysses style, all that cinematic imagery. And there felt a lot of physicality about it, just, you know, like a Jackson Pollock painting. I think it was important to get that feel across, particularly at the time, even though it was quite relevant, you know, that anger and aggression. And I put 1,000,000 words in there, so there's sort of plenty to go at. And I used to, you know, I that's my style, you know, that's the difference between me and Pete, I guess, you know. Harmonies like Ulysses and like Ever Fall in Love's like a Milton Boone thing. Not to put that down, but that's the difference between us, you know. it complements what Pete does, you know, and vice versa. But yeah, you know, I was aggressive. I threats before I do a vocal like other songs I did like that as well at the time. Seeing it on Jukebox Jury where they all voted it a hit, I think it was because, you know, Buzzcocks had a few hits. Otherwise, if it had been an unknown band, it wouldn't have got through. I don't think they would have all said a miss, you know. But using the vehicle at that stage, you know, to really punk it up, because we'd had a couple of pop hits, and it was like, you know, let's kick it in even harder now. Let's go for it with harmony in my head, you know.
Manchester and Salford, 3 cheers. It's the Buzzcocks. Thank you very much.
The last 3 singles which we released, parts 1, 2 and 3, all had funny symbols on. You know, the idea with those was that we wanted to get away from doing A-sides and B-sides, because we thought all our songs were equally as good. So we said, well, just don't put anything. She said, yes, but you need to have something in order to tell the people at the record plant which side to stick the labels on. So we said, well, instead of having A and B, let's have the different symbols. So we chose a triangle. And then I think the other ones were the Xena cards for ESP type research, where they had 3 wavy lines, a square, circle, star. As to whether or not it actually worked, I don't think so in some ways, because we used to notice that there were, instead of using A and B, there was different letters appearing on the matrix numbers of the records, which was Q and R and S and T. So instead of using A and B sides, we actually had P and Q sides.
Chainsaw,
Our Everything was part of our only Saturday morning TV that we did, which was a program called Fun Factory. The emphasis was definitely on fun, with all the presenters dressed up as whatever, and all the cameramen dressed up as animals and things, and loads of kids running around, which was quite disconcerting at the time, because we'd all been out drinking the night before. Getting up early on Saturday morning was a hard thing to do.
There was a band on before us called the Barracudas, and they were sort of running around, but it looked a bit phony to me. It was like this sort of a synthetic idea of how to, but it's an exciting little pop band. And initially on that one, I was just going to stay rooted to the spot because I couldn't be bothered with the program, really, And I thought, well, better show these kiddies how it's done, really.
Your looks, my charm, my own imagination, my loves, your hates, your own infatuation are everything, are everything. My hopes, your fears, your only limitation, your thoughts, my schemes, my own evaluation are everything, are everything. My looks, your charm, your own imagination, your loves, my hates, my own infatuation are everything, are everything. Your hopes, my fears, my only limitation, my thoughts, your schemes, your own evaluation are everything, are everything. Your looks, my charm, my own imagination, my loves, your hates, your own infatuation are everything, are everything. My hopes, your fears, your only limitation, your thoughts, my schemes, my own evaluation are everything, are everything. My looks, your charm, your own imagination, your loves, my hates, my own infatuation are everything, are everything. Your hopes, my fears, my only limitation, my thoughts, your schemes, your own evaluation are everything, are everything.
Buzzcocks sadly came to an end in 1981 on March the 6th, when I left and everybody else went off and doing other things. We all did like a bit of solo work, but went off and did all the other things that life entails one does before one dies. And then in 1989, due to a popular interest, we got back together to do a tour of America, just a tour of America, and then it was just a tour of Britain, and then just a tour of Australia and Japan. That was the first world tour, and we're currently in the middle of doing our second world tour.
And we're still doing songs like Autonomy, as well as sort of introducing new stuff. But the great thing about it, all the songs still sound as fresh as ever. I think we created our own sort of Buzzcocks world, really. Sort of insular from the general music business. We managed to do it, in the way we intended to, really, and didn't get sucked into the sort of music business side of it too much. It was all, in one way, an innocent thing, and it was allowed to breathe like that. And you can tell that from everything we did, because it wasn't like a show business act. It was just, you know, four blokes from Manchester getting up and expressing how they feel, you know. Anyone could do it, and that's what we proved, really. You know, anyone can do it. You know, that's the great thing about it. It's a natural raw energy that hasn't been tamed yet, you know. The lion's still roaring, I think. You know.
I always remember that before the demise of communism, the Russian government always used to say that the music corrupted the minds of the young, and I hope that we've helped in some small way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, if we had a chance to do it all again, I don't think we could do it any differently, really. Nobody could do it as bad as that.